What's happening? Welcome to More Than Mortgage. I'm Chad Anderson. Today, Zach and I are going to talk confidence. What a key word, confidence. How confident are you in the rest of 20 and 24? How about just 2024? How confident are you? Things have changed. Just a few months ago, everybody was very bullish and confident. Now nobody knows what's happening. It's an election year. There are a couple of wars going on globally. The US has tension with other countries. Inflation's still high. The housing market is nuts. It doesn't make sense. So, how confident are you in everything going forward in the final 8.5 months of 2024? So let's bring in Zach Jones. How you doing today, buddy?
Well, I'm a little bit confused by
Are
all
you
of this.
confident or confused or conflicted or where are we at today?
Man, I think we're going to have to put the governor on the throttle between you and me on this discussion because there's so much information that really is not making any sense.
Right.
But maybe, saying it out loud will maybe help bring some thoughts together. I could use some clarification.
Man, there's a lot to dissect in this. And so here's for the next like 20-ish minutes, guys. So you're basically prepared. Zach and I don't have like a very narrow and deep specific topic like we've had in previous episodes. But today we are literally throwing out just more, you know, brain thoughts for your brain food, collaboration, whatever you want to call it. Just get your mind working. 'Cause we're just going to pose questions and start going down theories because we don't really know. And none of this stuff is adding up. And there's a lot of conflicting pieces. And so let's start number one. I want to do housing first. Okay. Rates are going to be a topic, economy is going to be a topic. Maybe some political stuff with election and wars can be a topic at the end. But let's do housing first. Housing affordability is at its all-time low. It's at around 10%. And when you look at that, Zach, and you look at what interest rates have done over the last 2 years now, and you look at how dried up inventory was a year ago because people said, I'm not trading in my 3% interest rate on the house I'm living in to sell mine, have nowhere to live, or if I do find somewhere to live, I got to pay 6 or 7, even up to 8% last October in order to get to a new spot. Now, all of a sudden, this year, inventory, it's all relative, but compared to a year ago, is blowing up. All of a sudden, you've got more listings, more homes going up for sale, more activity in the housing market. I'll let you lead with this one. Literally, if you're a homeowner right now, what changed in your head? Like, how did you go from a year ago? Hell no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I'm not giving up my 2.5 coupon, my 3 coupon on 200, 400, $600,000, whatever it is. I'm not giving that up. To now today, all of a sudden there's inventory coming back into the market. Now we're still short on inventory. There's still a lot of room for inventory. But what changed? The fact is there's more than there was. What gives? Like what changed?
It's really confusing because let's start where you started, which is home affordability is at an all-time low,
Yep.
and yet home ownership is at an all-time high.
Yep.
So, I mean, you can dig into that a little bit and try to extrapolate some reasons for that, but those two things exist as opposite and contrary facts. So this inventory thing, I mean, we looked at the numbers here locally, and the inventory was up 25%, I think you said.
Mhm.
So a year over year from last year. So interest rates that we got lots of promises about that we're going to progressively decline over the end of last year and start declining this year. We've seen them come off of 8% as a critical high, and we're at a little bit of a high spot today, but we're over 7% on the the kind of the watermark measure of the conventional 30-year fixed, 20% down.
Yeah.
So that's a lot worse than it was last week. If things are moving in a direction of rate cuts, why aren't we seeing them? Things continue to push up, and I think that's a little bit down further in the commentary, but the market is responding not necessarily to the news, but to the news under the news, maybe is a way to say that. So are people now just exhausted with waiting and finally putting their house on the market and reconciling that they are going to give up their 3 or 3.5% rate to go into a 6.5% rate and accommodate their family and get the extra bedroom, or downsize, or whatever it is that they're intending to do, whatever's pushing or motivating that move? Are they finally resigned that things aren't going to change as far as affordability and interest rates, so we're just going to go ahead and pull the trigger on it? Or, as we've speculated in the past, are people selling their homes? And I could see this evidence in my pipeline as I see people say, I say, what's your net proceeds from the sale of your current home? Well, we're going to get 185,000. Okay, so how much of that do you want to bring to the new transaction? Well, we'd like to bring 100 all in, down payment plus closing costs. I'm not digging into the personals of what are you doing with that extra 85, but are they trying to resolve debt with that and take care of these $800 a month car payments and the accidental explosion of the credit card debt that just happened
Yeah.
incrementally month after month, Amazon order over after Amazon order over the last 24, 36, 48 months. It's a mystery to me why people are popping up and starting to move now, unless the idea is that it's personal family budgets that are driving this. It's a very interesting question.
I think a lot of it is habitual, bad habits, to be honest. People coming out of the pandemic, where a lot of people, especially in the housing industry, made tons of money. America got stimulus money. People were switching gears to remote lifestyle. Um, and there was just more money. There just simply was. And I think that people didn't adjust a lot of times. And when inflation started going crazy, compared to what it was, then people still didn't adjust. And I don't know that that's all of it. Maybe it's not even half of it or a fourth of it. That's just a feeling. I have nothing to 100% back that up. I just, from what I read and what I see, inflation's not coming down. And inflation doesn't come down because people keep spending. When people quit spending, that's when inflation comes down. So until that happens, that just tells me if people are still spending, but then they're getting more jobs because the part-time jobs are through the roof, then okay, you're just using part-time jobs or chasing debt with other debt. I have gotten more zero interest balance transfer offers in my email in the last 6 to 12 months than I did the previous 3 or 4 years combined. Like,
Right. So the
every month I get it. Every month from the same companies over
so
and
the
over and
credit
over.
the credit card companies have decided now is the time to sell that 0% balance transfer, because who would not transfer, a
Yeah,
balance of $7,200 from a 22% account to a 0% for
all
12
day.
months?
And they're gonna charge you a fee, and it's
Right.
usually, a few percent. So
They
on
get
7 grand, it'd be $210 that they get up front.
right.
And then the odds are, guys, this is just they're not stupid. Okay. It's just like when you go to Best Buy and you think you're gonna pay off your brand new 80-inch LED TV in 12 months. They're relying on the fact that you're not.
You won't. You
They're
won't.
relying on that fact. Now, maybe you are sitting there going, "Yeah, I do. I do that every time. I abuse
Mhm.
Best Buy." Okay, you're in the minority. Okay,
Right.
like it just that's the way it works. Those Best Buy cards, the Target cards, anything, the furniture cards, zero interest, yada yada yada. It's all good until
Mhm.
you can't get there at the end, and then you get slapped with all the interest. What people don't realize real quick on those cards too is that it's not just, oh, interest starts on the remaining balance. They hit you for the interest on the whole thing. It's like all the interest is simply deferred in these cards, and then it's forgiven at the end if you pay it in full
Right.
on time.
Right.
But the day you don't make that payment, the whole interest balance comes back to life and attaches to the back end of that. So That's what they're relying on. Um, I just think it's habits, and I think people are more in a bind a year later than they were last year. That's just my opinion. I think they need the bailout. They need the money to just go hit reset and not have everything else hanging over their head. And if they're smart, they get as debt free as possible.
Right.
Um, that's again, I don't necessarily have data on that. That's just more of a thing for me. Um, let's talk jobs. So we talked about part-time jobs. This is one I can't figure out either because no matter who's president, no matter who's government, all that kind of stuff, to me, it's whoever's there is always doing whatever they can to look the best, right? That's their goal is perception, make me look good, especially in an election year because I'm the incumbent. I want to get reelected. If I'm serving my second term, I want my party to stay in office, right?
Right.
So this is what's interesting is that the jobs market constantly exceeds expectations over and over and over every single month. It outperforms what they say they expect.
On initial report,
Yes. So
asterisk.
then they drill down, they dig in, and this is what I want to ask you, Zach, on your opinion. They dig in and they go, well, wait a minute. Very few of these jobs are manufacturing, so it's not necessarily helping the economy from a goods perspective. It's government or healthcare, things like that. Also, how many of these jobs are part-time jobs? A lot. So we're seeing those numbers. Then the next piece of that is that these numbers are being revised over 80% of the time, meaning March report comes out in April, and then in May or June, the March report gets revised down. So the market reacts to the April numbers based on March data. And then 30 or 60 days later, they revise the numbers and say, just kidding, it's actually this number. But then the markets don't react in the same way. It's not the
Well,
same instant. And then
the,
last thing, real quick,
yeah.
is the jobs. This is what's conflicting in my mind. We're talking about confidence and confliction. The job stuff keeps the economy going, hypothetically, and it keeps inflation up because if people are taking jobs, they're still spending because unemployment hasn't breached 4% yet. It dropped back down to 3.8.
Right.
So people are now still spending. The problem with people still spending is the feds can't cut rates because if they can't cut rates, then mortgage rates don't come down. Inflation would just go right back up again if they did try to cut them. So if you're the government, you're in this like seesaw battle where it's like, I need jobs to look good because I can't look bad there. But if jobs look good, inflation's still high. So I don't know that I'll let you go now for that, but that one just blows my mind too because it's both sides. It's going crazy.
It may be driven, just as you're kind of painting that picture, it may be driven by the government and primarily the administration, the powers that be, not necessarily the full federal government, but the administration needing to stay away from anything, any of those nasty words that start with R. And I'm not talking about Republican, and I'm talking about
Yeah.
recession.
Yeah.
So if their only kind of safe harbor from being in a declarable recession is job growth, then that would explain why they keep pumping these job numbers up and then revising them. And kind of going back to that point, I almost interrupted you. The market doesn't respond to these revisions because by the time they make these revisions, the market is responding to the next month's job report. And they seem to be making these, a little bit coincidentally. It's like, well, we got the revision yesterday, but the jobs reports, the May jobs report's coming out tomorrow. And so everybody's kind of forward looking and forward thinking. And so they disregard these revisions. And there's some sticky wickets to the jobs thing too, in that we've got a lot of people coming into this country that are they're getting jobs, and they're not in traditional form. They have not been able to be counted as getting a job because they've not been documented workers. But there's been some streamlining that's happened in the immigration numbers where people are able to work without documentation and be counted in the jobs report. So when you're losing full-time jobs and replacing them with part-time jobs, or you've got somebody who had traditionally held one full-time job and now they maybe it's a great example, very neutral example. Maybe it's a travel nurse that has three contracts running concurrently.
Yeah.
That person's reporting for three jobs, and traditionally that's one job in a hospital, signing in 3 days a week. So all of these numbers seem to be skewed. Throw this in on the inflation, kind of retroactively back to our previous conversation. This is a very difficult time to try to curb inflation in the United States economy because we're coming up on summer, and this is a time
Right.
of seasonally higher spending. It's always going to be higher spending in the summer.
Yep.
People are going to be traveling more. They're going to be out of school, and so there's more activities. Parents are counting their pennies, trying to figure out how they're going to get Timmy into camp and how they're going to get Sally over into volleyball practice, and all of the things that go on in the summer. Plus, you've got the petroleum industry puts in the seasonal blend, which is always a more expensive product. That's why we've seen part of what we've seen with the rising gas prices as the temperatures turn warmer. That's a separate blend of gasoline. They do different blends of the solvents involved, and it's more expensive to produce. So, on top of this emergency reserve that the Fed's supposed to maintain, we burned all that up, and now we're not restoring it. It's a crazy mess of what you described it as a seesaw. I keep thinking about Dr. Doolittle's "Push Me, Pull You," the two-headed llama. It's just you can't tell where you're going with it because there's so many things that are pulling in different directions.
It's really interesting, because again, it do you think let me ask you this real quick. Hard landing or soft landing? A landing's coming. One or the other, right? You you just can't keep running at this pace and not expect it. So the question is, I know they keep pushing for the soft, but like the longer this goes on and the more debt that accumulates and the longer inflation stays like this, like does that give us better chance for hard landing or is soft still possible?
I think that they are so invested. My personal opinion is they're so invested in this soft landing because it sounds better
Right.
that we're already probably in a crisis in different sectors, but they're hoping against hope that something magical is going to come together and solve the problems that exist inherently in the system right now, and that we're going to kind of get bailed out by fate. I think that there's that aspect of it is at play. And I also think the current administration would probably be in a position. This is not a slight against Joe Biden's presidency. When I say this, I would say this if it was somebody else. I think that we're in such a conundrum right now, 8 months, 7 months away from the election. 7 months, man, we're getting there, aren't we?
Yeah.
That we're in such a bind right now. There's a hope that if we can just kind of stave off any bad, terrible, catastrophicness that is going to happen until after the election, we can paint the picture. We can continue to paint the picture rosy, offer hope. We're going to get it together. I mean, you think about there's a new student loan forgiveness plan that's been promoted. You've got Joe Biden openly attacking the real estate industry and real estate agents, unashamedly asking real estate agents to reduce their commissions in a public forum, recorded for everybody out there to see. Never has somebody gone after that in the same way that they have this time. So you've got a pretty naked kind of pandering going on by the administration, looking for anything that they can garner in terms of good news and trying to offer things to help people feel good about who you vote for. And you know eh, Chad, the other side is conspicuously silent about what's going on right now. I have no idea what the strategy is there. Every day that goes by that we see, this kind of silent stalemate going on as we get toward election season lends me to believe that there's going to be a lot of fireworks and a lot of drama that happens. Now, that may be part of the plan is let's have lots of fireworks and drama to distract us from, what's really going on in the economy. But I think that getting back to your original question, hard landing or soft landing, I think that they're hoping against hope that we have a soft landing. There's some commentary this morning about the Fed talk about raising or lowering interest rates and where things are, and the hawks in the Fed are going dovish, and the doves in the Fed are going hawkish, meaning people who have taken a traditional position about the way the economy runs are switching over to the other side on this issue. So it's really confusing. It's really confusing. It's above my pay grade, obviously, to understand. And I'm left with a lot of questions, very few answers.
Yeah, it's let's transition into rates as we kind of wrap this one up. But there's so many angles, and that's why like I said at the beginning of this, we're just trying to get your brain working because there's so many things that have changed this year. If you just think about the basics of um, talking economically, how house prices have gone up. They've gone up. Rates have stayed up, and house prices have gone up. What
Right.
happens when rates go down? You think prices are going down? When rates go down, if prices are withstanding rate plateaus of 6, 7, and 8%, what do you really think is going to happen when the R word hits and rates tumble? Because that's what happens in a recession.
Right.
Remember, mortgage people and realtors, we kind of like playing the dark side in dice, in craps where you're playing you're playing the bad numbers and everybody hates you because you're at the
It's a
table over in the corner like ducking, just sipping on the
good
vodka
analogy.
cranberry, and
Yeah.
you're not cheering, but you're slowly just raking in the money. Well, that's kind of what happens in the housing industry with realtors and loan officers. They make their most money in a recession
Right.
because rates go down. So
We don't
people
want anybody to lose their jobs for the
no,
recession
keep
on that
keep
part
your
of it,
job.
but the
Yeah,
rest of
do
it is
all of
good for business, really.
that. It's crazy, but that's what happens. Um, and so it's just looking back at it and going, man, a year later, here we are. House prices have gone up. Rates are relatively unchanged. You could argue they're even a little higher, not off their peak, but just kind of on an average right now,
Right.
sitting at a little bit higher. And you got people who are in more debt than they were a year ago. You got people who are uh, unemployment is still up a little bit. It just hasn't gone crazy at the moment. Sitting at 3.8% off the last reading, but it didn't touch 4. Jobs revisions are getting or jobs numbers are getting revised over and over again. And now the Fed's talking about rate cuts. They said 7 up to 7 back in December. We're here today. They haven't done a single one. And the odds of them doing it at the May meeting are less than 10%. It may even be less than 5% by now, but it's almost a virtual zero that that's going to happen.
Yep.
So now everybody starts turning to June and July because, like Zach said, and this is where I just struggle. June and July, what is that? It's the summer. So you're telling me this is again, it goes back to the administration and what they want in an election year. The best thing, and I've said this on multiple videos, the best thing and the best way for Joe Biden to get votes going into November is to step back and be like, look at what we did. We cut rates. We were able to get them down. We controlled inflation. And now mortgage rates have dipped. And now look at all these people who are able to refinance, take cash out, sell their home. He's pushing for from the State of the Union, the tax credits, the title insurance credits, all these different things. Look at what we've done. Look how much money people are saving, and look at what's coming with my agenda. The problem or the good thing for him is if he can do that, then he can get rates down. People instantly feel it with a mortgage.
Yep.
They don't feel it if cheese is 18 cents cheaper and milk is 90 cents cheaper and orange juice is $1.50 cheaper. And all of a sudden you look at the grocery bill, you go twice a month and you saved $100. Nobody feels that
Right.
because it's spread out over the month and it's $100. Somebody feels a mortgage payment being $200 or $300 a month less, or refinancing your mortgage and paying off all your debt and having a budget savings. Maybe your house payment went up, but your overall budget is now $800 cheaper because you consolidated everything. People feel that, and then you get to tout that, right? But Zach, the problem is if they drop them in June and July, you still have an inflation problem and you're dropping it at the exact time that people spend more money.
Right.
So
Yeah.
now you have an even bigger problem because you just made it cheaper for everybody to go spend when they were already going to be on a spending spree for the next 90 days.
You put gasoline on the fire.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, with rates, I think if they bring them down in June or July, it's almost artificial.
Yeah.
It's forced.
It's a
It's
game,
not
right?
natural. Yeah,
Right.
it's not a natural progression. It's not a reflection of how things are going. It's not a reflection of real life. I think it's artificial, and I think it could even set us up for bigger disappointment. So again, I don't know the answer, but I'm just like spewing some of this stuff out because people need to think about the ramifications of some of these decisions because it's more just the knee jerk, right? Like, oh, rates went down. This is amazing.
Right.
Meanwhile, if you really think about it and take a step back and analyze it, you might be temporarily happy while at the same time holding your breath for the future disaster that a rate drop does.
Right. Almost like getting a $10,000 extension to your automatically maxed out, your already maxed out credit card saying,
Right.
woohoo! But you're not thinking about what that extra $10,000 at 22% interest is going to cost you next
Yeah.
month. You just go out and buy a jet ski on it, because that's what you want.
Because why not?
Yeah. So I've kind of got a wrap up thought here
Okay.
and I don't know where you're going as far as wrapping this whole thing up, but what occurs to me is all of these questions certainly leave me and my household and my family with a question about, well, what do we do? What are we waiting for interest rates to come down? Is the Fed going to change those rates and bring the consumer debt down? Do you buy a house? Do you not buy a house? I think that, like a lot of things in the world right now, we are so distracted, man. We've got so much going on with all of the things. We could do a 30-minute deal, just bullet points of all the things going on in the world right now. So distracted.
Yeah.
What do you do as a consumer, as a family, as a head of household, as a responsible steward of your family's well-being? What do you do at home? And I think that that's the most poignant question in the middle of this, is to do a little self-examination and say, hey, listen, we need to trim our spending down. We need to get our budget in shape. We need to stop hoping and start living in reality. Maybe it precipitates a move down, a move out a little bit, trying to get some of that equity and get the high interest stuff out of the picture. Man, I think the automobile industry is next to get hit hard and in a major way, and it's probably a good time to be buying a car, depending on the model, or saving up to buy, because they're going to bottom out. The automobile industry has got some big problems going on right now that nobody's really talking about. So I think it kind of comes down to, the personal, how does it hit home? And I think that that's maybe the biggest and most poignant outcome of our discussion here today is, what does it mean for me? What do I need to do to prep myself for the worst and still hope for the best? Not saying don't take a vacation this summer, but you might want to think about doing that a little bit differently.
Stay at the Hampton Inn, not the Ritz.
Yeah.
Might be the best way to do that. Yeah, I mean, biggest thing too is we're finishing up on rates is 7 rate cuts to essentially 0 is basically it. And so it still circles back to, I truly believe this deep down, even if we hit the R word, even if we hit the recession, I think the recession would include a booming housing market because
Right.
there are still going to be people who are cashing in on the opportunity. And even if it's maybe your primary home individuals will struggle a little bit. Guess who that's going to bring back into play? Good old investors, the good
Yep.
old cash buyers with a lot of money that were a problem a couple of years ago during the pandemic with the housing industry, to the point that certain communities and builders and so forth weren't even selling to investors because they didn't want their communities to become infested with them. They wanted it to be more primary residence or second home, vacation home type occupants. So yeah, we'll see. But it still comes back to house prices are going to continue to go up. And if there is a recession, house prices, I think it will continue going up because, like we said, a recession means rates come down. Rates come down. You're going to see housing, I think, withstand it. So
Right. And I keep saying it, Chad, every chance I get. House values are still increasing at 5 to 6% nationally.
yeah,
You
yeah,
live in a hotter market, it's a little bit warmer than that. So it's,
and
that's an undeniable fact. We continue to climb like this, regardless of what the cost of money is or anything else. House prices are going up.
and the other reminder, I said this yesterday on a video. Uh, you can only access your equity in your home by 3 ways. And that's either get a HELOC, which is anywhere from 8 to 12% right now.
Right?
Okay.
Expensive.
So that means you're going to borrow 300 grand at 8, 12%, somewhere in there. That's like an old credit card.
Yep.
Um, Second way is cash out refinance, which means I don't know what, which means you get 6, 7, 8%, on a mortgage. Third way is sell your home. So two of those ways, you sacrifice the great interest rate you have. The
Yep.
third way, which is the HELOC, you pay 8 to 12% on a large sum of money. So again, that's why people are getting tired of waiting. And that's why you could see more inventory too, because they need a bailout. So, all right, bail us out by helping us. You can do like, subscribe, follow, hit the bell, download, share, uh, text a link. I don't care. Do anything. Just help us out and share the content. Hope you enjoyed it. Again, it was one of those like we just found ourselves constantly asking questions. More just, what about this? Well, what about this thing too? Well, what about this over here? And all of it is going to have an impact for the rest of this year. And how confident are you in some of these things transpiring, improving? Are they going to get worse? Leave a comment or send us a text or a DM. You can see all of our content on these socials right here. He's at Zach Jones Loans. I'm at This Chat is Real. Appreciate you hanging out, and we'll be back next week with another video. Take care.
Thanks for joining us.